Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this evening. It's I have downloaded my karting data in Race Studio 3. Now what? Right? And what this is based on is loosely based on our most popular video that we have on YouTube, which is titled "I've downloaded my data in now what?" Right? Kind of a little bit more generic. And it was using Race Studio 2, our software that we have used for gosh, close to 10 years for analysis. And Race Studio 3 analysis is now being production, so we wanted to build a new one. And I've downloaded my data, now what? And Eric from Point Karting has been, we've been chatting back and forth about having some specific karting sessions, and so I thought, well, this would be a great time to do one. And so I've downloaded my karting data into Race Studio 3 analysis. Now what? And so those videos, if you want to watch those, they're linked in. If you're here live, they're linked into the chat box. You can click on those and save those links for later. If you're watching this later, anytime I mention a link that of something, it will be in the description box down below on the YouTube video. So right down below the video, there will be a box that typically says show more. If you open that up, all the links that we're going to talk about today will be down there. You can go review those as you go. We got probably 8 or 10 links that are going to point you to some other things that with more detail about the kind of stuff that we're going to talk about today. Point Karting's been great enough to help us host this. Eric is here with us. Eric, you would like to say a few things before we get started?
Yeah, I think just thank you, Roger, for hosting this, and thank you everyone for tuning in. This is a great practical starting guide that I hope people here attending this webinar and then moving forward will use as we move into this new era with Race Studio 3. Which functionally has some new features in it that we'll go into today. But at the end of the day, this is the side of the analysis software and the side of AIM that really allows you to take the Micron 5 product and any of the AIM products and bring it to life and make it very powerful and a tool for you to compare with others or with your own data, as Ryan mentioned there as we got started. So I'm definitely excited to get started with this and learn a little bit more about Race Studio 3.
It's funny. In fact, I'll go to that slide here really quickly. I'm a trainer for AIM Sports. I'm the national training manager, and I've been with them for 11 years now officially, and did seminars, on-site seminars for them as a contractor for 5 or 6 years before that, and was a user since when they very first started, and with my son that was racing karts, and so I've been around it a long time, a lot of experience, and what you just said there, Eric, is exactly right. Even preparing for this webinar tonight, I continually learn things. Every time I give any training of any sort, including this one, as I continue to learn. So hopefully we can pass some of that on to you, and some of the ability to want to go in and start pushing buttons and learning some more yourself. I think it's a success. Just a little bit about myself. Raced most of my life from when I was about 16 years old. Started off in off-road racing with my family, my dad, and we did raced buggies all over the Pacific Northwest is home base for me, and then decided to get into motorsports in a form of motorsports that is desert racing for the most part, and then we lived in Seattle, the Seattle area, and so we traveled a lot. So we spent time up and down the desert areas, California, Arizona, Nevada, Baja, and raced, and then did a lot of short course stuff as well. In fact, that picture right there in the upper left corner is Sacramento. I also did a little bit of circle track racing for a car owner friend of mine, and then my son came through karting. We had a great time there. We did karting for 3 or 4 years. Probably would have still been in that, other than he got just a little bit, maybe a little bit large to be competitive in karting. Don't know where he got that, but so we locally here, there's the local road racing group is pretty big, and we looked into what cars he wanted to turn left and right, and so because he had done some Bandolero stuff and some Legend circle track racing when he was 15, 16. And so we got a Spec Miata and started to run that, and ran that for gosh, two years. The second year running it, he won the SCCA runoffs in the brand new Spec Miata class at that point. Gosh, like 60 cars entered in Topeka, Kansas, and he ends up winning the whole thing. Kind of started a little bit of a chain of racing up until about 5 or 6 years ago. He was racing professionally in with Ford, Mazda, of course. Was a Mazda development driver from that, and then with Ford in the Ford Mustang Challenge Series, and then went into off-road trucks with Traxxas RC Cars, the remote control car company, and then also with Mopar as a factory driver. So lots of background. All of it had AIM data, and all of it was about building and trying to figure out ways that we could make him faster with because almost every class that he ran in was a spec class. Spec Miata, MX5 Cup, Mustang Challenge, all these things. We had to, they all had AIM data in them, and they all had, everybody had the same power, the same cars, the same tires. So it was real important to get the most out of it. With that, I've been as a trainer for AIM for quite some time, traveling around giving these kind of training sessions. So just a little bit of background on me and what kind of drives me to be here, and just enjoy the training side and getting other people the information so they can improve their motorsports just the way that it did for me. So looking forward to that. Ryan says in the chat box, yeah, Miatas are too expensive. We could not have done it now. We're a small family, no huge budgets or anything, obviously, and back then we could afford it. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, you can still do it, but you're not going to run up front with the price of some of those cars now. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that feeling and feel it as well. What are we going to do today? The way I always like to start off with an agenda just to give you an idea of where we're heading. I know that's the way I think, and we're going to talk just a little bit about AIM Sports, about a 1-minute tour of where you can get some stuff fixed and some other things. But then we're going to go over just a real quick review on some of the stuff we covered in the first webinar. Probably about 2 or 3 minutes, right? There are some fundamental points that I think will always make your data analysis more comfortable for you if you just follow these basic steps. And I've got a single page that will cover what I really want to cover that we talked about last time. And then we're going to get into a live Race Studio 3 tour where I've downloaded my data. Now what? You're going to download the data, you're going to open this thing up, you're going to click on the button, and you're going to be presented with the database, right? Okay, where do I go? What do I do? We're going to walk through some of the icons, some of the different areas, just to make you feel comfortable, and get you where you can start clicking around and get to your test, and then set up your test the way you want it to look. You may or may not know. I'm going to talk about user profiles. We're going to personalize what it kind of looks like. We're going to save those views today. And I will make all of that available to you if you're if you're interested in it. Drop me an email at the end. For those of you who are watching it later on YouTube, I will have built the files from what I work on today, and there'll be a link in the description down below to download those user profiles and import them onto your machine if you really want those. And we're going to do some actual data analysis examples. We're planning on doing this all in about an hour, so we're going to have to, we'll be ripping through some of it fairly quickly, but you'll be able to go back and watch this video or a lot of the videos that we're doing on our website that I'll talk about a little bit later, some of the detail that is much more deeper analysis training from some other videos that we'll link for you. Okay, let's get that to close. There we go. A little bit about AIM Sports. We've been around for quite a while. We've got 2 offices. We're down here in Lake Elsinore, California, and we're in Roanoke, Virginia, and this AIM Sports Southeast office. If you have any problems, any questions, obviously you go to Eric, go to your local dealer, and I'm sure they can help you. If they can't, or there's a hardware problem, something you can't get to your dealer, you don't need to give us a call. Call the 800 number, and we have folks that are out there available to chat with you, answer your technical questions. If you have something that's not working quite right, they can chat with you and give you an idea of how to get the stuff sent back into us. We are well known for our customer support, and not only on the training side, but also on the any sort of hardware repairs that need to be done, any adjustments, any things like that. So give us a holler if you have any questions, any need, just let us know, and we're here to help. So I want to go over a couple things. I talked about there's a 2 or 3 things we talked about in that first webinar that's linked in the chat box and linked down below. Best practices of how to do this, how to do your data analysis. I always use this little slide right here that basically you're in this loop down here on the bottom part. The upper part, you have to put the hardware on. You have to design it. You have to think about what you want. Are you going to want just the micron? Or do you want a 1 temp, a 2 temp? When I say design, I don't mean, designing by, resistors and boards and that kind of stuff. We'll handle that part, but design your system. What is it that's important to you? And so figure that out, and then of course install it, configure it, calibrate it. The configuring and calibrating on a Micron 5 is done virtually all on board on the Micron 5. You can connect it to the computer and do some other settings if you wish as well, but it's really designed to do almost everything on board. And then of course go out and use it. Go out on the track, make your laps, come in and download. And this is this little part that you're going to do time and time again, multiple times per day, certainly multiple times per weekend. You're going to use it, download it, you're going to open it up in the software, and then you're going to analyze the data. And you're going to ask yourself these 3 questions. What happened? Where did it happen? And why did it happen? And that, I like to kind of break it down a little bit and talk about this, because that's really what, it's not as difficult as it can be, appear to be when you first look at it. What we're going to focus on today is this analyzing part, right? I've downloaded my data. Okay, we've already gone through all of this, and we're going to do the open and analyze part, and we're going to talk nothing but about that. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the download part, just as a couple of points with the cursor, just to show you where it's at and point you towards a webinar that we've done that talked about all of the settings inside of the downloading and setting up file naming and all of that. But really, what we're going to talk about today is what happened, where it happened, why did it happen. We're going to talk about how to do that. This particular sheet right here, this page, is one that I have worked on for a long time to get it to fit what's really the data analysis concepts. Shared this last time. I just wanted to share it here. This first part here is what we just kind of talked about. One of the big pieces of this is the driver. When you get to the why, there's one more question you almost always have to ask yourself: did the driver create this being understeering off the corner? Let's use that as an example. Did the driver do something to create that, or is the cart doing it and the driver's reacting to it? That is a huge part of the why, and I just want to always make sure we mention that that you're digging deeper than why is not a single question, not answered by a single answer. Sometimes it's there's multiple steps. We'll do some data work and we'll look a little bit at that. I always like to say, again, making sure that this is not it doesn't seem as complex as it is. It can be complex, but if you walk through some of these steps, it'll make it a little easier for you. I always think of things as the money channels: lap times and speed. That's really what you're focusing on. That's what's important to you. I'll walk up to a lot of people's computers at events, and they'll have 12 or 15 channels open, and I'll just slowly start closing stuff down until I get to their best 2 or 3 laps and a speed trace. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. All the other channels that you have, they're fantastic. They're great. They're very important. But all they really do is supporting why your lap times went up or down, or why your speed went up or down. Okay, all those other channels just are supporting the money channels. And then the other one is, I like to always think about things as a data analysis triangle. When you sit down at the computer, don't just open up the screen, open up your data, and and try to get a vibe on what are the squiggly lines telling me. Sit down there with some sort of an idea and go, okay, what, based on what just happened, either I'm a driver or my child is a driver, whatever it happens to be, and you go, well, it looked like the cart was bound up in that session. Well, let's drive into the vehicle performance piece of this. Let's put some of that other stuff off to the side, again, thinning it down so it's not overwhelming, right? Think about what you're trying to solve and then bring up the data that will help you solve that. And don't allow the whole process to overwhelm you. Vehicle performance, driver performance. Did you see something or feel something even as a driver of the cart? Did you know, maybe I'm kind of goofing up on turn 3. Let's dig into turn 3 and see what I'm doing. See if there's something I can help myself with the driver performance side. And of course, the vehicle health. We'll talk a little bit about that today. That's an important one. If you don't finish races, you can't win races. And vehicle health is an important piece of what we do here. Let's look at what the max revs were. Let's look at what the water temperature did. Let's look at the exhaust gas temperatures, whatever it happens to be that you have set up on your cart. So data analysis concepts. I always like to share that, and then always I'll be referring back to that as we go. Live data. Let's jump in. Let's look at this screen real quickly, and then I'll open Race Studio 3 up and we'll take a look at it. This is Race Studio 3. Again, we've just released it as a production piece of software. It has been in beta for a year and a half, and we're getting a lot of folks that are starting to use it. Let me open it up here real quickly. Boom, there it is. I'm going to close that test, just so we start off where I just kind of talked about. Hey, I've downloaded data. Now what? Okay, if you haven't updated your Race Studio 3 in a while, yours may not look like this. The only difference will be there's a 2 and a 3 up here in the upper left corner. If you have the older production software, and current, by the way, is 3.52.03 from 352.00 and on, which was only about 2 or 3 weeks ago, you will now have a button number 3. These are both analysis processes. If you click on the 2, you will be taken directly into the old Race Studio 2 software that you probably still have loaded on your computer. It will just open up the data you just downloaded in Race Studio 2. If you click on the 3, it'll open up that data in Race Studio 3 and bring you right here, right? Because normally you would be in in your configurations or somewhere else. But when I click on Race Studio 3, boom, we're in here into the Race Studio 3 analysis. Okay, so if you don't have a 3 up here in the upper left toolbar, go into this little cloud over here in the upper right corner. If you click on that, it will come up and say, here is the software that is downloaded on my computer for Race Studio 3 in this particular case, and here is what's out on the web, on the internet. Make sure you're connected to the internet when you do this, obviously. If you've got a blue cloud with a down arrow right here in it, it's just telling you, even without coming here, that there is a download available. There may be a bunch of different firmwares down here that are also available to you. What I do, even though I do not own an MXK10 display, if the firmware is available, I just download everything and put it onto my computer. These firmware files, the way that AIM has set it up, is number one, the firmware files are fairly small, like 50 kilobytes or something, and it only keeps the newest 3. So when you just kind of keep this clean, so all of the stuff is downloaded on your computer that's available from AIM, it just throws away the oldest stuff, so it doesn't end up taking much space on your computer. And you'll know then if there's an arrow down here, something will be here. It might be a new version of Race Studio 3. So I always like to keep that everything downloaded, so it's I can see when I'm triggered up here by this arrow that is telling me that there's something new. Okay, one other thing I want to talk about before I go, there's this wrench button up here, and when you're there is a data download option. It's going to look the same as when you go to download your Micron 5. You can get to this same function. There's the only thing I'd like to talk about here is nothing more than pointing you towards a video that is linked in the chat box and is linked into the description. That's called Race Studio 3 Data Download Options. It was our very first of this webinar series that we've started on Tuesday mornings here on the West Coast, that we started in March of 2020, and it goes through every one of these options. What I want to make sure you do is think about, where are you putting your data, and you can come in and you can change this. I have it in a C drive AIM Sport data folder. So all my data goes into here, and then I can come in and I can create folder structures, a new folder for every date that I go to the track. If you have multiple drivers on your team, you could have a folder underneath the date for every racer. go through that video. It'll walk through all of these options and talk you through it, and how to automatically name your files and put them into the right folder structure, so it's there and waiting for you. And the one on the other end, which is the advanced tab, the only one I want to mention here, the only other one I want to mention here, for analysis mode, I've got both checked. So when I download a file from my Micron 5, it takes a copy of that and puts it into the data download structure that I've told it here, and puts it there, and then it takes a version of it and puts it into the RayStudio 2 database, and it puts it into the RayStudio 3 database. It takes up a little bit of extra space on your computer, but by doing this, if you're coming from RayStudio 2 and you may want to jump back, by doing this, it's available for you in both spots. If you click on either icon, it will open up analysis and it'll open up that test. Okay, so kind of a handy little thing there while we're learning the update from RayStudio 2 to RayStudio 3. Okay, a whole video about that. Go check out all of these options, what all of these options are. Go ahead and take a look, and you'll get an idea of what that looks like. Did have a question there. Talks about RayStudio 3 for Macintosh. The right now we do not have a native version. Obviously, you have to run Parallels or one of those programs to load Windows onto the Mac. Your M1 computer chip, it's right now we can run RayStudio 3 runs on it, and it works, and everything is fine. But the USB driver, we do have a USB driver issue that everybody is running into because of the way that the M1 is working. But we're a week or two away, I hope, from resolving that issue. We're testing right now that it will work on your M1 Macs as well. It works just fine on the other older Mac platforms. You can run Parallels or Boot Camp and run with Windows loaded and run our stuff. A lot of people do, but the M1 is a problem right now. But I think we're going to fix that shortly. We're hoping. Okay, so we're downloading our data. We're going to click on RayStudio 3, and you're going to be presented with a screen. You've downloaded your data. You've clicked on that little 3 button, and you come to this screen. And this is where we're going to start. We're going to spend some time here, and we're going to walk through what the different parts of this screen are, and what they're doing for you, what they're telling you. And then we're going to jump in and go in a little bit deeper and open a test or two, and start to do some data analysis. Over here on the left side, let's talk about the left edge first. What it is every time you download a test, it's going to be placed as a group. Let's say you go to the track on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What we basically do over here is for a location that you were at, we know the GPS coordinates of is obviously you've used a track, you've attached a track to it, and it puts it in here, and so it groups them together from like Wednesday to Wednesday. We expect typically most of you are going to be racing over a long weekend, either just a weekend or a long weekend, and it puts all the like this one here, Watkins Glen. There are 16 files and an 18. There's 2 numbers here. One of them is how many data files that have been downloaded on that weekend from Watkins Glen, and the other one is the number of SmartyCam videos. We're not going to talk a ton about SmartyCam videos, but those are what the 2 numbers are: data files versus video files. And the one we're going to look at today, there's just a single number because there's no data files here. So we have 2 files that were downloaded. And I've clicked on that, and that takes us and shows us what is under this February 21, 22 date. There was a test that was done on the 21st, a session, and there was a session that was done on the 22nd. There's the time it was ran, the number of laps, the best lap, what AIM calls venue type, which is really the session type. One was a warm up and one was a qualifying. The racer's name will show up here. I've changed the names of the vehicles and the names because it's webinar data, obviously. What the vehicle was, if you had multiple vehicles you were running over the weekend, you could actually have, car number 3, car number 4, car number 5 under your tent, whatever. Webinar data, the championship, it's just nothing more than another way of filtering the data. A lot of people will do 2022 club series, regional series, national series, or a series you run in, just name it with that, or some people just use the year. And then of course the track. And when you've loaded it up and when you bring it into Race Studio, it looks at the data. You've told it a track while you were there, and then it also, as we bring it into here, we look at the larger database and apply the exact track you ran on, the exact direction. Sometimes you use a chicane, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you go clockwise, sometimes you go counterclockwise. We've got a large database of tracks here, and we really compare closely, and we select the track that you ran. Okay, and then so there's on the left is all of your different runs, and you can sort by the date up and down, or you can sort by the track just by clicking on the headers. So if now that's got the oldest stuff first, and then we can also click it again and ascending, descending kind of order. I keep this fairly thin, but and a lot of support work comes in here as well, right? No GPS and some other things, but support data. But so you can sort it by this. Then you click on the weekend that you wanted to look at. All of your tests are there. If I were to click on that Watkins Glen data, you'd see there is a bunch of tests on June 13th, right? And we can sort them by the best lap time. We can sort them by the number of laps. We can sort them by typically the date, right? So that's by default. We can see what the type of session it was, who the racer was, what the vehicle was, and all the different things. So over here is where you actually pick the session that you want to take a look at. What's kind of cool about this is AIM has not even opened, the Race Studio 3 has not even opened this session yet. And if I go back to the test, the session we're going to actually look at, I've clicked on just a single click up here on this 11. I can click on the 17. You see all this is changing down here. We haven't opened the test yet, and yet there is some information about this test in a preview window. And some of this can be very valuable. In karting, it can be very hectic. Things can happen in a hurry, right? So you sometimes you're checking tire pressures. You want to take a drink of water, and you got to change your gearing, right? And and hopefully you can download it real quickly. Even take the time to do that, hopefully. But maybe you don't have time to deeply analyze, but you've got some basic things you want to know or need to know. Well, you can click on the test here, and we haven't even opened it yet, and it shows all of your lap times. It shows the number of feet that you drove on each session. So that might be something you might want to look at. And you can set up, add and remove other things. But right here, I've got the maximum exhaust gas temperature. And we haven't even opened the test yet, right? If you want to take a look at a laps report, here we've got all the same lap times. We can your minimum, average, and maximum speeds by setting this little preview button, right? This is kind of we can sort by the lap time. Maybe lap numbers even a better way, and then we can turn off some of these slow laps and turn off some of the fast ones, and we can take a look at the data over here. And if we can get rid of some of these, just we can also slide this little bar, and we can fine tune down to the laps that we're after, and it's just trimming them down to just the fastest laps now, from the 48.1 to the 48.8 by a slider bar. Don't even have to come over and check them anymore. And now every one of the speed traces, just like in a measures graph you would normally look at deep in Race Studio, you can see this and go, well, where's my inconsistencies? And we haven't even opened the file yet. And here you can see this little gray area is trimming out or showing you the fastest lap. If I hover over that, you can see it's in red. And then if I come down to the bottom, there's the lap of the slowest one in that area. And that gray is just showing you the difference, shading the difference between your fastest and slowest in that area. Down here's a slow corner. You can see some difference there. Boy, this area right here, this driver, pretty darn consistent, in that corner. Some inconsistency here, a little bit at the end of the straightaway. There was one lap that was pretty slow here, and so forth, right? And we haven't even opened the data yet. You want to look at the track map real quick? Just click on the track map icon. There is a picture of all of the laps that we have active, and we could zoom way in and start to see exactly where the driver drove. And we haven't opened it up yet. There's a weather thing. You can go in here and look at some data about it, more properties about the data, where the files are on your hard drive, what firmware you had, a bunch of stuff here. And all of this in the lower half of just clicking on the test, and we haven't opened it yet. Okay, so that's let me go back to the kind of the standard way of looking at it. There's the qualifying. We have a whole bunch of buttons up here that we'll briefly talk about. The choose to see what to see, data or movie files. If we can, by clicking on this little icon, if you had movie files, let's say, we can link the movies with the data and they'll be on one little line, or we can have them separate. You can look at the video file or you can look at the data file. Show all sessions. These are all the profiles I have saved. We can share these through the cloud that's built into, you have an AIM account over here. I can save these on that and share it to multiple computers, or share them to other users if you wish. Import and export profiles, and loads of different ones here. So that's what that button is. This button here is, we can come in here, we can change the lineup. We can make it look as what we call the agenda view. And this won't make much sense here, but if I go here, these are now every day exactly when the session was in kind of an agenda view. If you have a teammates and you have 2 or 3 carts under your tent, you'll see all of the sessions stacked up here, and you can just click on them right here and open up all 3 of those guys' data at the same time, right? So pretty handy way of looking at it in the agenda view. If you're looking at your data by yourself, I happen to kind of like it as a list view, but you have some options. You can turn on and off the preview if you want. You can have the preview show on the side. All that same exact preview stuff we were just looking at can be here on the side or the bottom. Again, not going to go through a ton of this other than just kind of show you that it's out there. We can import new sessions. Let's say your buddy had a test, or you had a test from before and you want to bring it into your database, as opposed to connecting your Micron 5 and just downloading it straight in. You can click on this button. It'll just give you a browse button and say, hey, do you want to import an entire folder or a file, and go and bring it in, right? So pretty straightforward. You can also drag and drop from a Windows Explorer window, and just drag it right into this little area here, and it'll import it directly just by dragging and dropping. So that's kind of cool. Open sessions. If I click on one, I can click on that little icon and it will just open it, or I can double click on it. Okay. Change properties. I'm sorry. If let's go into the one we're going to use here. Let me click on it again so I open up the right one. And everybody here, if you're downloading data, you've probably seen this dialog box. And when you download your data, this dialog box always opens up, and you can put the driver's name, you can put the cart, you can put that championship, 2022 Club Series, or whatever it happens to be, that type of session that it is. Or you can click on this button and come in and adjust this later. The only thing you can't change is the track. We'll talk about that a little bit more a little bit later. But here we can change all of that. Put in comments. If you forgot to put in what your gear ratio was, your tire pressures, you can come and type them into the comments and have everything working there for you. Tweak all of that if you wish. That's the properties. The next one is if you want to take a data set and you want to send it to somebody. There's this little arrow going the opposite direction, which you grab that particular session and you can click on that, and a dialog box will allow you to come in and tell you where you want to store it on your computer and be able to send that data file to somebody. The eraser is erase certain sessions. I don't want to do that right now. Or you can click on it and you can send it straight to AIM. You can, if you're having a problem with it, with a data file, maybe something's not working, it's reading incorrectly, you want to send it straight into us at AIM while you're connected to the internet, this little button here will not force you to use an email or zip it up or put it on Dropbox or anything like that. This will send it through the internet to the support team, the software team directly in Milan, Italy, and they will get a copy of it, including your contact information that you type into it, and a little short description about what your problem is. So that's kind of a cool little button right there. Math channels. The last webinar we just did yesterday, Tuesday, March 15th, it's on our YouTube site, is all about the math channels, math channel function. If this is kind of more of a introduction to Race Studio 3 analysis, so we're not going to go deeply into that, but there's how you get into the math channels. We can do a ton with math channels. Take data that you have, apply different functionality to it, and get even more information by using some different math processes. A lot of default math channels are built for you. And then the track map. We'll talk more about that when we jump inside. Okay, so those are all those little icons there that are here above all the sessions that you're manipulating or working with, or doing things with the sessions that you are about to open or are sitting there waiting for you. Okay, so let's open up a session. Let's take a look at it. I'm just going to pick this this qualifying session and just open it up. Remember, we have a couple different ways. Number one is just double click on it. Number two, click it once and then click on the open session. I'll take this minute right now to do a couple more things. We can right click all over the place in the software. Context sensitive mouse clicks, right clicks. So if I click on this, there's some of the things you typically may want to do from this spot are going to be available to you. Export it, attach it, to aim, erase it, open up that properties box. Or that's the right click, or there's, whenever you hover over things, there's almost always going to be a little cogged wheel that you can also click on and get typically the same thing as a right click, although sometimes it'll be slightly different. So there's other ways of doing it. But for my way of typically getting into files is I just double click on them. I double clicked on it. It opens up, right? Okay, so we started off in the test database and we now have opened it up and okay, now what, where do we go from here? There's AIM is very, very powerful with this new Race Studio 3 software, and we give you lots of options. The first time you open it up, it will be generally fairly basic and just the default way of looking at it. You have a bunch of icons that are across the top here, and these are all functions. The first one is a time distance layout. If you've used Race Studio 2, we used to call it the measures graph. Okay, it's the squiggly lines. It's this time distance tab I have open right here. It was built by clicking on that, but when we open it up, that's where almost everybody likes to go, so that's the default, right? So here it is. We've got, we're going to talk about the layout of this screen real quickly. Again, not a ton of detail, but to give you enough to be able to work around in it. So it's really built into 3 or 4 different pieces. And over here on the left edge is the channels list. We've got a button here that you'll see this in AIM quite a bit. There'll be an area, and then we'll do multiple things underneath that area. And here we can either look at our lap times from this session by clicking on the laps button, or we'll click on the channels. And these are the channels that were available, came out of the Micron 5 that are available to us to review. Above, there's a search box here, and above that search box is the channels that we have open and we are using in our analysis. You see that there's 3 of them that I have turned on over there. I'm going to go ahead and turn on a 4th, and then we'll talk about those 3. Let's say we want to show throttle position. It's in my list. It's right there. You come into this list down here, and you can just click on it. You click on it once. Depending on how the software is set up, I've got it set up in a kind of a powerful way. But where I just clicked on it, it's in the list, but I'm not seeing it, right? So because I've got it set up to show throttle position either here or in the storyboard, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, or in a scatter plot, I have to tell it that now that it's up here and available for me, where do I want to see it? So we come up here and we right click, and it says show in, and I could either show it in this driver time distance plot, I've named it driver, or in the storyboard down below. I'm going to say show it in the driver. If you don't have your setup to allow different channels and different panels and different functions, when you clicked it and throttle went up there, it would have showed up in this box already. If you don't see it, right click on it, and it's waiting for you to tell it, do you want to see it down here or up here? You notice I have water temperature. It's been added up here, but it's not in this window, right? It's kind of a cool way that we can do this, and just use your mind and say, boy, what would I like to kind of know? Down here in this, what we call the storyboard, this is every lap. Since you can see the speed trace, it's the green one. It starts off on the out lap. It's going around. You can see the speed trace going up and down that the driver's going around. Each one of those vertical lines that you see down in the storyboard is the lap marker. This is where you went and started. That was the start of a lap, and there was the end of that lap and the start of the next one. And you can see the speed trace. I've also added the water temperature into the storyboard. I can turn it off now, but I've already added it. And now you see what the water temperature was when the driver left the paddock area, went out onto the track, and there was the end of the out lap, the end of the first hot lap or the second lap, and so forth. And you can see here where it finally got up to a temperature and started to kind of come down and then get steady and run the entire route until the end of the session. That's pretty powerful when you can put different things in different areas. I like to have the water temperature or cylinder head temperature or something like that down there. If you're in car racing, maybe it's oil pressure, oil temperature, water temperature. What is it you'd like to see in different spots? I just wanted to show you that that's available to you. I've added the throttle position up into the main window up here by clicking it there. If I wanted to turn it off, right click and let's hide it. Let's not view it in that window. And then if you wanted to get rid of it totally, you would hit the little red X and it would go back down to here. Okay, the channels view. If you can't remember or you know a little bit about the channel, but you've got a big old long list and you don't want to go search for it, if I were to come up to the search box and if I just click THR, right, start to spell throttle, it will thin this down and only show you what is available to you by the search box. If I get rid of that for a second and let's say I search by only stuff that had was in percentages, right? Again, it's the only one that had a unit of percentage. If I come in there and say G's, it's something that had a G in it, and everything that has a G in it now is showing. So it's but maybe degrees. There's all the stuff that either had degree in the name or in the unit. So that little dialog box is pretty powerful. That little search box, pretty powerful if you get a lot of channels. If you're a lot of times in karting, that is these are all the channels we have. We can kind of find it probably pretty quickly, but the search box, very powerful. Use that if it works out for you. The other thing is, so we've got our channels. We can also go to our laps, and we've got the best lap is always by default is always selected. We can come in here and select other laps and be stacking them on top of each other here in the main window, which we'll talk about in just a second. So that's the laps tab. Go back to channels. So I've got the time distance that we're looking at here. We've got a little track map down here. We can take that out if we don't want it, but I like to have it in there, and by default it's usually down in there. This is the main window. Those of you that haven't done much data analysis, we'll call this the squiggly lines. We call it the time distance function here. We used to call it the measures graph, as I mentioned earlier. Bottom line here is the left edge. If you put the cursor all the way to this left edge, let me bring it in just a little bit. It's giving you a value up here above the cursor. It's telling you it's 32.8 feet since you left the start finish line, and it's 0.317 seconds. So wherever I put that cursor, it's telling me the time and distance since the start finish line on this lap down here, the best lap of 47.5. Okay. If I put the cursor here at the end of this straightaway, right about there, let's say, we're 1,274 feet, 12.8 seconds in. The speed at the cursor was 74.7 miles per hour. The RPM was 12,565. Here on the track map, the little dot is showing you where it was at. Also a dot down here if you wanted to, or I like to have the two maps because I can zoom in and see real detail on one and have a bigger picture down here. But again, user definable. If I wanted to, I can just remove that window. And oops, it resized on me a little bit because I took that was holding it. So boom, and you can always grab all of these little lines in between. You can always grab and resize, and put them in there. And so now here I am, still in that same spot. There's where it was. That's the lap I'm on. This was the RPM right there at that spot just before I started to slow down was 15.4, and my speed was 70.5. Okay. If you want to zoom into a specific section, let's say, and say this corner down here, right down here is where your driver's struggling. You can put the cursor there. It's this little red section right here, and so if let's say we can just take your mouse and scroll wheel, and you can get and start to zoom in on it, and scroll wheel back out. Or kind of a cool thing is that red segment right there is what I'm worried about. If I double click on that red, any of these different segments, but I'm gonna click on number 10, corner number 10, If I double click on that, it zooms into just that section. It shows me the duration of that section in the it's not showing me anything past it. It's showing me exactly what this is. There it is. There's the time I was spent in there. My speed, my RPM. You can see where the driver was slowing down. You can see this shoot down in RPM right there. Locked up the rear brakes as he's coming in, and then comes along and starts to get on the throttle and off and running. If I click back on that top bar again, it goes back out to a full lap. Okay. Go ahead.
Roger, I wanted to interject for just a couple things. A couple things that I'm noticing as we're transitioning here into Race Studio 3, carryovers from Race Studio 2, and a couple questions we got in the chat box.
Okay.
Real quick. It's no secret that a lot of these kart tracks in the United States, and a lot of racetracks in general, not just karting tracks, are in areas that Wi-Fi may not always be available. And
Internet.
certainly hardline internet.
Yeah.
Internet may not be available as well.
Okay.
In that case, can you speak a little bit about how, say, in particular, the track map interface will be different for those that can't, say, connect to, I assume this is pulled from Google Earth, correct? And then Ryan asked a question in the chat box about how to see your peak, average, and minimum values of a certain channel on a given lap. In Race Studio 2, that was kind of baked into the measures toolbar, or the measures graph.
Yeah.
What's the best way to see that here?
Let's hit the last one first, and then we'll talk about the internet connectivity thing, right? And how that works. First, the functionality is very, very similar in Race Studio 2 as it was in Race Studio 3. I have turned it off right now, but if you were to click on this channel tag, this happens to be lap 8, which is what his question was. What's the highest RPM in that view? There's a couple ways of getting there. Number one, just click on this tag, and it will tell you that the highest was 16,043, and it will draw a red line where that happened. Where was the lowest? Let's do it. This one's on a rev limiter. That's what all those down arrows are. So there's a weird low in that. But let's do the same thing, but let's say it's speed instead of RPM. A little bit clearer maybe to see. The highest speed was 75.5 miles per hour. And there's a red line drawn right where that happened. And the low speed for the lap was 30.4, and it drew a green line for that. You can change those colors, but that's what the default is. And it drew a mark there. So you can find those high and lows very, very quickly by doing that. By default, that might even be turned on. It is a good time to show you something. If I right click here, again, right click functionality, I could have clicked on the little wrench over here. Settings, since I clicked in the time in this measures lap time distance bar, I'm going to click the settings. There is min-max visuals. I turn it to on selected just so I don't always see those min-max visuals, those telling me where the high and lows are. But by default, I think it comes with this turned on. So I'm going to do always on, which is like Race Studio 2 was set up originally. Boom. There you go. Your high and low is now going to be there all the time. Okay. So that's one way. And that's most people will like it that way. I do a lot of more detailed data analysis. And if I stack up a bunch of laps from 3 or 4 tests, that starts to take up some screen space.
Right, it can hide some of the screen space.
Yeah.
It'll hide some of the data that you look at, sure.
Yeah, so that by clicking on the settings and turning that to I want them to come on, but only when I want them, which is on selected. If I really want it, all I got to do is come up and click on it. If I had multiple laps going, turned on, let's say, and I want to know what the red lap was, I clicked on it once, then I see the red lap. If I click on the other one, I can turn it on, and I can turn on one of the RPMs, right? So I can turn them on individually if I wish to by clicking on the channel tag. The other way that is probably even a better way, certainly for bigger picture, not just lap 8, but what was my high RPM on this session for the entire way? The channels report is one of the tabs I have here saved in this user profile. And it comes in there, and I just clicked on that tab. If I didn't have it there, you could have clicked on this channels report icon, and it would have added this tab down here. And there is my max RPM for every lap right there. Even with a little bit of I've just turned on a little histogram of colorization of it, and it gives it some colorized parts on it, right? We can turn that off by coming over, and I think it's I think it's this button. Yep. Then we can actually turn that off, and you just have the number, right? The red one will be the highest one, the green one will be the lowest high in this particular case. There's your minimum RPMs. And this is a direct drive kart, so there wasn't even a clutch. So you can see this was the highest minimum, got through that corner pretty well, that slowest corner, right? Obviously. And there was a 4031 on lap 6 that was pretty slow. But you can do that with all channel values. It's not just RPM. Let's say you wanted your maximum speeds. There's max speeds. There's average speeds. We just have to come in, and you can set these up by clicking on different different things, and we can add more channels and add more things by coming in and just adding a channel and say, okay, I want my do I have exhaust? I have exhaust temp. Let's say battery volume. We'll pick anything, right? And you can search for it as well. But let's do GPS lateral G's. I don't think I have that on there. Yep, lateral G's. What's my highest max lateral G's per corner? Boom, there they are. So there's to answer that question about to highest value, lowest value for a channel, average value for a channel, the channels report really is the best way to do that. And once you set this up, now that I've added that, and I'm going to get to your internet-based question, Wi-Fi-based question here in just a quick second, I've made a change. What the best thing for you to do is to come over in this little button, this little cogged wheel that's a little icon up here. We've just got a few more minutes, but if I click on that, I can save a profile. I can save a profile as, give it a name, and then save it underneath that one, which I'm going to do here. Save profile as, and I'm going to call that Point Karting, and one. Let's just say we might do a couple different ones, and click on OK. You're going to see it's going to take just a quick second, and you just seen it did it. And now the first part of the name of this particular session we're working on under the tab, Point Karting is the profile I'm using. South Garda K, it's a kart track. South Garda in Italy is the name of the track we're at, right? So if I wanted to load a different profile now that I just saved this one, maybe I have a new one, another load. I'm going to load some profiles that I have saved. Here's one that's called the kart basic, but yet with a dark background. It's exactly what we're just looking at, but I've changed some background colors and changed some color, some of the line colors, so we can see it. Maybe you're outside, you're out on underneath a bright white tent, and the sun is blaring, and the white background on your computer is not working well. You can save everything you do with a dark background. If I come back to go load profile called kart basic light, it's basically the same thing, but with a white background. So user profiles, and then I can always come back in and reload the Point Karting one I just saved, right? It happened to have that tab open, but it's the same thing on the measures graph as well. So that one has the max G's and the water temp and the color turned off, right? Almost every setting you push is remembered as a profile setting. So if you don't want the little histogram colors, you can have them totally colorized with in a red to green bar color chart, right? So the highest G's are bright red one way, low and their 1.7 is the other direction, and or you can turn them down to just the little histograms we talked about, or nothing, all by clicking on some buttons, and that's saved in the profile. Okay, let me answer that other question real quickly before I forget it. Good question. I'll talk about that one. I'm connected to the internet here today. Obviously, you're at the track, and even if your track has good internet, maybe your computer's not connected to it, right? These background images are not local. They are stored, are being fed into this via an internet connection. It happens to be, in my case right now, it does happen to be Google because that's the default, but you have lots of other choices of map backgrounds that you might want to choose. All of those will just come on and they're saved by the user profile. If Bing is a better map for that area, use Bing. If here has a better background imagery, that fits a little bit better with their satellite based imagery than the other one, use that one. When you're at the track and your computer's not connected, here's a tip. The one you might want to remember is this AIM logo right here being red. That means that this software is connected to the internet. If that is gray, you're not connected to the internet. That's a quick way of knowing. You're wondering why your background imagery is not working in your home and your Wi-Fi is turned off or something. If that's gray, you're not connected. So if what you'll see when you're at the track is more what this looks like, unless you got a Wi-Fi hotspot. I mean, something like that you connect your computer to. But this is no background, just a standard track map look and feel, because we're not getting the web-based imagery. But if you want to have it like that, and some people love this look and they just want this instead, still works exactly the same, just without the Google, the satellite imagery in the background. If you want to turn it back on, just a simple click of that little button. Number one turns it on, so you got the little globe, and then the second icon appears because you have the choice of picking different providers for that imagery. Okay, good question. I appreciate that. Eric, you wrote something in there. Was it multiple laps? You can do if somebody else has a question. Gotcha.
Yeah, Chris asked a great question, and whether you're watching this webinar now or on YouTube, the question was essentially, hey, what kind of interface and ability do we have here? Can we pull up? How do we pull up multiple laps from the same driver? How do we pull up and overlay laps from two drivers if we want to compare? Something that's definitely covered in the original Race Studio 2 tutorial, but maybe bears repeating here in this Race Studio 3 tutorial.
Perfect. That's exactly where I was kind of hoping to end this up before we jump back to the presentation materials. There is, let's talk about first bringing up multiple laps in a single session. Say you had your best lap here and you wanted to compare it against a lap earlier, right? You can, there's multiple different ways. Let's talk about the simple one I've already showed you before, is come up to the laps tab and click lap 3. Let's just say, right? You can come in there and I like that to be a little smaller. We're now looking at lap 8 and lap number 3 stacked on top of each other from a single test. We can zoom in here and look at what the driver's line. We can look at where the speed was lost and the dot follows along with it in my zoomed in map. We can look at what we call down here a time compare bar. Let's do this analysis really quickly, and then we'll show you a lap from two different sessions, maybe two different drivers, right? So here I've got two laps here. One is a 47.5 and one's a 48.1, and when you do this, you get you get this box down here below, this one more graph that shows up when you have multiple laps selected, whether it's 2 laps from this one session or best lap from 2 different drivers or 4 different drivers or 6 different drivers. You get what we call a time compare bar. That time compare bar is the most powerful tool we have in Race Studio for you. And the reason that is, as new users, or certainly as an experienced user, I still use it to this day every time, this is telling you where the driver was faster or slower and where the time was gained or lost. It's the time compare bar. And whenever there's a big jump in this line, in this particular case, the red lap is a flat line. You can't see it because the blue lap was slower all the way. That's why it starts here together. They'll always be at the same spot at the start finish line, right? Based on time, because you cross the start finish line at speed. And then right away, if I put the cursor right here, let's say down at partway through turn 1, the blue lap is already 0.108 seconds behind the red lap. The red is the bottom line. If I were to grab a different lap, let's see if I can find one where here's even a better example. Let's use this one. The red line is the reference lap, or it's the fastest of the two. And then the blue one, if you're above it, you're slower. If you're below it, you're faster. So this one here, at this point on the track, right here, going through this, there's a little bit of a kink, and then getting ready to go into this big, wide open turn 2, it looks like, whatever. At that point, the blue lap, while being a 0.2 slower overall, was ahead by a little over hundredths, right? 11 thousandths. Not much. I had to work hard to find that little spot there. But if it's below that line, he's ahead. And then if it's above it, he's slower. What you're looking for is where were the big swings? Right here, the driver went from being pretty darn close, entering about apex of that corner or so up here, turn 2, turn 3 maybe, and then lost. Gosh, went from being only a hundredth behind to being boom, almost 6, right in this one little area. And you can see by the speed trace that the blue one was slow coming off the corner. The red one had a pretty good runoff. If we zoom in a little bit there, you can see that the blue one was just gosh, right there was 1.5 miles per hour slower than the red one coming off of that corner on the exit of that corner. Because of coming off slower, you see this time compare bar change. I didn't look at this first. I looked at this first, and then it drove me up here to try to figure out why that happened. Boom, and you can see by where the point is on the track, it happened here late in the corner. Then you would start to dig in. What happened? Where did it happen? We're starting to solve the first 2 of those 3 things, and the third one is why. And now we could bring up and we could turn on our throttle position, or we could look at lateral G's. We could look at the driver's line in the corner, right? You can see that the red one actually is in here a little bit tighter, the red dot, and the blue one was out here farther, probably maybe hit the curb. Maybe it was oversteering a little bit. Something made this blue one a little bit slower than the red one right here, and then there's your speed trace difference. Okay, time compare bar, powerful tool. Always use that. I wanted to show one more thing before I jump out of here, and I'm going to jump back out to the full lap. Over here under the laps button, this is something new in Race Studio 3. I can click on this lap here, and it will give you, select just the best lap. I'm going to select that. Boom, it turned off that other one. If you want to see my best 3 laps, by clicking that, it found my best 3 laps, made them active on the window. 3 laps, we find a lot of people either are looking at 2 laps, and maybe it's just quicker to come down and click on it. But boy, being able to use this quick little bar here to see my best 5 laps, right? Put them on, stack them on top of each other, and then look at these traces and see exactly where the red one was faster or slower in this case, right? So pretty cool little tool, this laps button up here above.
Roger, we have one last question here, I think, before we may have to start wrapping things up and close things up. This is about customizing your kind of view. The way you have it lined out right now, just for everyone's reference, at least in Race Studio 2, is how I love to look at it. I have my measures toolbar and my GPS map on the right side. So essentially, it's the same of how I love to look at data personally. But let's say you wanted to move that around, or you open this up and it doesn't look configured exactly like this. How do you get that track map exactly where you want it located?
We'll be a little brief about it, and then we'll come back with maybe our next one. We'll do a little bit more. But let's say this coding is happening. Race Studio 3 is ever evolving. Right now, if I wanted this map to be over here and not here. In fact, I'm going to close it. You right click and you can add or remove windows. What I can't do is grab it and drag it and drop it, right? That's not coded in yet. So we have to remove it. And then let's say I want it on the left side. So I would right click here and I want to add a window to the left, and then choose what would that window be. And it might be the track, right? And so I would just scroll down to find all these different things we can put in there. And I can select the track, and boom, there's the track is now on the left instead of the right. So it's as easy as getting rid of it and adding it, right? And it's all done with right clicks typically. Let me, if you like that, let me save it one more time. Just I'm going to save that profile. Is right now it's Point Karting 1, so I'm just going to save it. And then I'm going to come in and show you how quick and easy is these profiles. I've been saving them and not, right? I'm going to go back in there and say I'm going to load my profile from the one I started with, and it puts it back where it was, right? So if you did get it like the way you like it, save it as a profile. Very, very powerful. And you can right click and you can add windows, top, right, bottom, left. And when you add it, let's say we're going to add one way to the right, one to the right of, I clicked on this one, so the right of that one is in the middle now, and I could choose anything I want to do, a little histogram, let's say, and it would add histograms in that area. So build it the way you like. And then I want to do one more thing as we're kind of closing it up. I want to load back up that basic let's do Point Karting. have your map on your right. You talked about multiple laps from different drivers. I don't want to leave it without doing that real quickly. If I want to add another lap from a different driver or a second lap from the same driver, go back to the main tab, all tests, back right here where we started, right? This is the open one. You can tell that by the way the icon has changed. If I click on this one, just double click on it, we now have the session of qualifying and the warm up. There are the 2 laps that are added, and boom, we are looking at driver A, driver B. This happens to be same driver, just 2 different sessions. But if I was to open up driver A and driver B, we would be looking at their 2 best laps and then being able to compare them. So looking at multiple laps from either 2 different drivers or against yourself, very, very straightforward just by going to the database and opening them up. Okay. And if you want to close one of them, it's as easy as just coming to this little X. Is very similar to Race Studio 3. Let's just get rid of the red driver by clicking on the on that session. We just closed it. Okay, pretty straightforward. We're gonna have to save some of the other ones. Dave Armstrong, I think that was maybe how do we get to the track map to the right side? We just moved it around a little bit, Dave. So I think we answered that one a little bit, and everything else there. Did we cover everything else, Eric? Of the ones that are questions that were already asked.
Looks like there's a couple questions here about basically seeing the time compare when it pops up. I tried to answer that in the chat there, and then
Perfect.
Looks like some questions here about marking different number of laps available and visible. I'll anyone that has any questions after this, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to work individually with people, or anyone watching this on YouTube. Any of my contact info, you can reach out to me anytime. Those are probably individual based questions.
We'll share that in just a second. The perfect. So the I can't help but not answer that one because I get that question a lot. Is why are they only saying 2 on theirs, right? If there's an option over here under the options window, and it's we need to fix it a little bit better, but it's kind of hiding down here at the bottom of it. It scrolls off the bottom. Number of allowed reference slices. It defaults when you get it at 2. I always set mine to 4, and it saves it from then on. But what that's really doing is if you were to open 50 laps, like an organization that uses our software may do, we didn't want to overwhelm it with all these different things. So if we were to open up the 5 laps, like we're only showing 4 because that's the max we're going to show you, and then these little eyeballs and the which one's not being shown, it's closed, right? We're not showing it, and the reference for the time compare bar is the one that's red. So if I wanted to close one, I could open up and look at a different one. Those little reference slices, if you want more than 2 options, scroll down and number of allowed reference slices, and that will get you what you're after on that. Okay, and if you're not seeing the time compare bar, we can also turn that off here by the time compare bar. It's on the show time compare. It defaults, I think, to on, but if somebody's checked that off, you might not see it. Okay, I hate leaving some of those questions hanging like that. Let me minimize that. Let's get back to the presentation real quickly. Again, you're going to be going through this little route, and the best practices really are to answer that question: what happened, where did it happen, why did it happen? Hopefully we gave you enough tips through the software just to find the right icons to be able to get your way into data analysis, and then bring up a lap and start to take a look at it and answer that question: what happened? I'm a little slower in turn 3. Why? Where in turn 3? Was it entering, exit? We kind of looked at that with those 2 laps, and then try to figure out why. Didn't have a ton of time to get into a ton of analysis, but that gives you an idea. And then think about this page when you start thinking about it, maybe thinking you're getting overwhelmed by some of the huge amount of options you have and data squiggly lines that are there. But what you're really doing is answering those 3 questions. You're focusing on the speed trace and the time compare bar, and you're really focusing in on trying to help the driver get faster, the vehicle get faster, or the vehicle last longer with the water temperature thing we talked about. Okay, that's we just want to make sure we do that. The on the way out, kind of closing this up, the YouTube site is some of you are watching it there later, some of you watching it here live. This will be number 200 video that we have up there. Just a ton of information up there. If you just go to YouTube and type in AIM data, you'll find it certainly. There's a link in the description box below if you're already watching it on YouTube, but all the links we've talked about are down there. If you're here live, it's in the chat box to get to all the different things, including our webinar series. The AIM, we're really a customer support company that happens to sell racing electronics, is how we like to say it. We're out there at a lot of kart tracks, a lot of all forms of motorsports. If you have any questions, give us a call, 800-718-9090. That'll take you directly to our tech support line, and they'll transfer you around if they don't need it or you can't find me. I'm going to show you my email address in just a sec. If you can't get a hold of me, call that number. They'll ring you straight to me as well. If it's something about hardware, those guys, our tech staff are really, really sharp at all of this stuff. So some contact information. I forgot to put your email address on there, Eric. I'm sorry, but there's my contact information. If you want to get a hold of Eric and you can't get a hold of him, and drop me a note, and I will make sure you get in touch with him. Roger@aimsports.com is how you get a hold of me. Obviously, you can call and do some other things, but email really does work best for me. I work here. I'm in the office all the time, or I have my phone and I'm checking my email all the time. So. Anything else that you like to kind of add, Eric, as we're kind of closing this one down?
No, I think that this was a great introduction to Race Studio 3. I know I learned a couple little things that I didn't before, and lots of great questions and interaction from people that attended the webinar live. For everyone on YouTube that's watching this later on, don't be afraid to reach out to Roger or I, or your local AIM dealer. This is kind of a learning curve for everybody that's going to Race Studio 3 from Race Studio 2. A lot of it carries over, but this is how we learn in motorsports, is by asking questions. And probably if you have the same question, chances are 15 other people do too. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And thank you everyone for attending.
Absolutely, I appreciate it, Eric. I appreciate you helping hosting it. The such power in the training. We touched on just some of it today. We'll put together another one in another month or so, and we'll do. I've downloaded my data now. Part 2, where we go even a little bit deeper, and then we'll start to do some other karting related training as well. Again, if you're looking for even more information, go to that YouTube site. Join our webinars on Tuesday. We're talking about in much more depth, and I have co-hosts come in with me. Eric joins us quite a bit on karting related stuff, and we do one of these every time. And here we are in mid-March and of 2022. If you're watching this later, and we're doing probably for the next month or so, maybe the next 6 webinars, we'll be doing nothing but focusing on single functions of Race Studio 3 to learn about and go over all of the specifics of a single function. So a lot of information coming if you haven't visited already. Thank you everybody for coming. I appreciate all of you who are here live. I appreciate all of you watching there at home. Look forward to doing these again. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Eric, again for putting this on. Ryan talks about, was there a schedule for the webinars? Changing them up a little bit, but if Ryan, if you send me a note, I'll tell you what's coming. When we put these on YouTube later, I always hate to announce what they are. They're not timely, right? Somebody's watching this 5 or 6 years later. So give me a note. I'll tell you what I have planned so far, but we'll go from there. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for coming, and we will see you at the next one with Eric and Point Karting. Thank you.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.